Birthday party? The table was piled with gifts, happy all for my sister's child. My child's seat had nothing. Mom laughed. Only the best for our angel. My sister smirked. Your kid doesn't need anything. Silently, I handed over a document. Mom's smile instantly vanished. Dear birthday. Melissa Foster lived in a quiet suburb of Chicago. In her kitchen, with morning sunlight streaming in, she took a sip of coffee while reviewing her schedule for the day. A meeting at the accounting firm, a parent-teacher conference at her son Taylor's school, and preparations for the weekend family dinner. An ordinary day was about to begin. Mom, help me with my science project. 6-year-old Taylor came running down the stairs. His hair was still tousled from sleep, his pajamas twisted, yet his eyes sparkled with curiosity and intelligence. Melissa smiled as she stroked her son's head. Of course. But breakfast first. Taylor was the only child of Melissa and Stephen. Melissa and Stephen had been bound by unwavering trust and love since their college days. Stephen worked as an architectural designer at a local company stable, but far from glamorous. They had built a modest yet happy home. As Melissa was pouring cereal into a bowl for Taylor, her smartphone rang. Looking at the screen, she saw a message from her sister Brittany. Mom's birthday party clashes with Kayla's dance recital. Can you get the party date changed? Melissa sighed. Brittany had married Jason Clark, an investment banker, 4 years ago, and lived in a mansion in Chicago's upscale neighborhood. Her 7-year-old daughter Kayla was the apple of Grandma Carol's eye, adored by the entire family. Carol was unusually fixated on Kayla, always giving her top priority. Here we go again, Melissa muttered, typing a polite reply. I'll ask Mom. But since we just changed the date last month for Kayla's piano recital, it might be difficult this time. Stephen entered the kitchen and placed a hand on his wife's shoulder. From Brittany? Melissa nodded. Yes, demanding we prioritize Kayla's schedule again. Not surprised, Stephen said, as he began pouring coffee. Last week when I went for drinks with Jason, he seemed a bit down. Looked like he was troubled about something family-related. Melissa gazed at her husband. Jason typically presented himself with unwavering confidence at family gatherings, boasting about his impressive investments and lavish gifts for Brittany and Kayla. It was unusual for him to be troubled. What happened? Stephen shrugged. He didn't say much, but apparently they tried one of those family DNA test kits. Something seemed to be bothering him. Anxiety flashed through Melissa's chest. Brittany had always been wild with men, causing various troubles since high school. But Melissa thought she had settled down after marrying Jason. At least on the surface. A few days later, as Melissa was finishing work at her office, her phone rang. It was Jason. I need to talk to you. Can we meet after work today? Melissa was surprised. Jason rarely contacted her directly. Of course. What's wrong? I can't talk about it over the phone. 6 at the cafe in the city center. Jason was sitting at a cafe table, covering his face with his hands. He looked utterly exhausted, a stark contrast to his usually confident demeanor. As Melissa approached, he looked up and gave a bitter smile. Thanks for coming. I didn't have anyone else to talk to. Jason began talking about the family DNA test results, how he had felt something odd about Kayla's genetic traits, and suggested the test, how Brittany had initially refused with irritation but eventually agreed, and the doubts that grew within him as they awaited the results. I love Kayla with all my heart. But he hesitated. Before I see the results, I want some certainty. Melissa, you know your sister well. Do you think she's hiding something? Melissa struggled internally. Was it right to probe family secrets? But Jason's anguish was genuine. She took a deep breath and said, Brittany is complicated. In our home, Mom always gave her special treatment. Brittany is accustomed to being the center of attention, and sometimes she lies. Jason's expression darkened. If you'll help me, I want to find out the truth. For Kayla's sake too. Melissa placed her hand over his. I'll help. But whatever we find, Kayla is innocent. We must make sure she doesn't become a victim. Jason nodded. Of course. Kayla is my daughter, whether we're blood-related or not. While Melissa felt reassured by Jason's words, she shuddered at the thought of the storm ahead. Exposing family truths might jeopardize her own position. Yet anger over years of unfair treatment from her mother and sister smoldered deep within her. She made up her mind. It was time to face the truth, whatever it might be. Taylor's birthday fell on a pleasant Saturday in May. Melissa woke up early and was making his favorite blueberry pancakes. When Taylor came downstairs, Stephen lifted him up and spun him around. "Happy birthday, you're 7 now." Taylor laughed happily and wrapped his arms around his father's neck. "Will all my friends come to the party today?" Melissa smiled as she approached her son and kissed his cheek. "Of course. Danny, Michael, and Emma all said they're coming. And since we're having it at Grandma's house, Kayla will be there too." Taylor's expression clouded slightly. He liked his cousin Kayla, but always felt that Grandma favored her over him. Melissa knew this. She herself had been hurt by her mother's biased affection. Melissa stroked her son's hair and said, "Today is your special day. Everyone will be celebrating you." At 2 in the afternoon, Melissa's family arrived at Carol's spacious home. The front door was decorated with happy birthday letters, but inside was a surprising sight. The living room was filled with pink and purple balloons, and a massive Princess Kayla banner hung on the wall. Taylor's name was nowhere to be seen. "What is this?" Melissa asked her mother, restraining her quiet anger. Carol shrugged, her jewelry glittering. "Brittany decorated for Kayla. Isn't it lovely? But today is supposed to be Taylor's birthday party." Yes, Carol waved her hand dismissively. "But think about it. Taylor's a boy, so he probably doesn't care about these cute decorations, right? Kayla received a special award at her recital last week. I wanted to celebrate that too." Melissa was about to protest when the doorbell rang. Taylor's friends and their parents began arriving. She swallowed her objections and greeted the guests with a smile. The party proceeded loudly but with a strange atmosphere. Carol paraded Kayla around, continuously introducing her as my genius granddaughter. Brittany, dressed in designer clothes, enjoyed conversations with the adults, wine glass in hand. Meanwhile, Taylor played with his friends in the garden, but occasionally came inside, noticing that his grandmother and aunt paid him no attention, showing a somewhat lonely expression. Stephen placed his hand on Melissa's shoulder. "Your mother and Brittany haven't changed." Melissa leaned against her husband and whispered, "I just hope Taylor doesn't get hurt." Cake time arrived. Carol brought out a massive superhero-shaped cake from the kitchen. Taylor's eyes lit up. Finally, something had been prepared for him. However, Carol placed the cake not in front of Taylor, but in the center of the table. "Everyone gather round. Let's celebrate a special 7th birthday." Melissa began to feel grateful to her mother. But the next moment, Carol positioned Kayla beside her. "Kayla, blow out the candles with Grandma. Make a special wish for Taylor." The smile vanished from Taylor's face. Melissa intervened immediately. "This is Taylor's birthday cake. He should blow out the candles." Carol looked momentarily confused but quickly smiled. "Of course, that's right. Taylor, come here." Taylor stood next to his grandmother and blew out the 7 candles. As everyone applauded, Carol put her arm around Kayla's shoulders and said, "Angel, help Taylor cut his cake. You always do it so well." After the meal, it was time for presents. Carol directed everyone to move to a large table in the living room. Mountains of presents were piled on the table. Colorful ribbons and glittering wrapping paper made it look like a department store Christmas display. Taylor ran over excitedly but soon stopped. None of the gifts had his name on them. Every present had Kayla's name written on it. "Grandma, where are my presents?" Taylor asked in a small voice. Carol answered with a smile, "Our angel deserves the best. Kayla worked so hard at her recital last week. This is a special reward." Melissa was speechless at the scene before her. Her chest burned with anger, and her hands began to shake. "All the presents are for Kayla on Taylor's birthday?" Her voice trembled with suppressed anger. Brittany interjected, "Your child doesn't need them, does he? Taylor always plays with the same toys anyway. Kayla has artistic talent, she needs stimulation." Melissa's blood rose to her head. She took an envelope from her bag. It contained the DNA test results Jason had requested. In that moment, she felt the urge to confront her mother and sister with it, to expose their hypocrisy. But seeing Taylor's sad face, Melissa relented. Now was not the time. She knelt in front of her son and took out presents she had prepared herself from another bag, a science experiment kit, and the dinosaur encyclopedia he had wanted. "Happy birthday, my brave boy." Melissa embraced Taylor tightly. A special gift from Mom and Dad. A smile returned to Taylor's face. Melissa stood up and exchanged glances with Stephen. He understood his wife's intention and nodded. Everyone, thank you for coming. Melissa addressed the gathered people. We're going to take Taylor to the park now. We want to celebrate his special day as a family. She looked directly at her mother. Thank you, Mom. But we've had enough. Carol tried to say something with a confused expression, but Melissa had already taken her son's hand and was heading for the door. 2 weeks after the birthday party, Melissa's anger hadn't cooled, it continued to burn quietly. She had already received the DNA test results Jason had requested. The envelope remained unopened, stored in her desk drawer. Do you really need to open it? Stephen asked worriedly. They were talking quietly in their bedroom. Taylor was already asleep. Melissa heaved a long sigh. Jason has the right to know the truth. And I can't forgive Mom and Brittany's attitudes. You saw how hurt Taylor was, didn't you? Stephen placed his hand on his wife's shoulder. I understand. But this is a big bomb. Once dropped, there's no going back. Brittany made the bomb, Melissa answered quietly. I'm just lighting the fuse. The next day, Melissa called Jason during a break at work. His voice was tense. The results? I haven't looked yet, Melissa answered honestly. I thought I should see them with you. I see. Jason paused for a moment. Thank you. Can we meet before the family dinner tomorrow? Yes, I'll go to Mom's a little early. 4. Sunday afternoon, Melissa waited for Jason in her mother's driveway, holding the white envelope. He arrived exactly at 4. The two sat silently in the car, staring at the envelope for a while. Open it, Jason finally said. I don't have the courage. Melissa took a deep breath, opened the envelope, and removed the papers inside. Her expression hardened. Jason, she said quietly, your suspicions were correct. The DNA match rate is the probability of you being the father is almost 0. The color drained from Jason's face. He gazed out the window and silently nodded. How do you feel right now? Melissa asked carefully. Strangely, not that shocked, he gave a bitter smile. I think I knew somewhere deep down. People always said Kayla doesn't look like me. But she's my daughter. Blood relation doesn't matter. Melissa took his hand. You're a wonderful father. How do I talk to Brittany about this? Jason's voice sounded tired. I'll help you, Melissa answered quietly. At dinner today, in front of everyone. Jason looked at Melissa with surprise. In front of everyone? It's necessary. Melissa's voice was filled with determination. Brittany has had her way for far too long. And Mother has allowed it. For Taylor's sake too, this has to end. At 5, the entire family gathered in Carol's luxurious dining room. Brittany was dressed in the latest designer clothes, and Kayla wore a cute dress. Taylor sat quietly in his chair, wearing a simple polo shirt. Would you like some wine? Carol asked, opening an expensive bottle. Jason, this is from the vintage you like. Jason forced a smile. Thank you, Carol. Dinner began, and conversation started with everyday topics. But Brittany quickly turned to talk about herself. Kayla's new piano school has such a famous teacher, she boasted. There was an audition, and only 5 students passed. Kayla was the youngest. Carol exclaimed with joy, that's wonderful. Kayla is always special. Taylor recently won a prize at the science fair, Melissa said quietly. He made a volcano model all by himself. Well, that's nice, Carol said dismissively and quickly changed the subject. Brittany, I hear your Instagram followers have increased. Brittany nodded happily. Yes, up to 20,000 now. My Fashion Week photos were quite popular. Melissa put her chopsticks down on the table. Brittany, your fashion sense is wonderful. But you post a lot about Kayla on Instagram too, don't you? Of course, Brittany said proudly. Everyone says how cute she is. Especially her eyes that look like Jason's. The atmosphere at the table froze for a moment. Jason gripped his wine glass tightly, and Melissa exchanged glances with him. Really? Melissa said in a quiet voice. I don't think Kayla looks like Jason at all. What are you saying? Brittany laughed, but her eyes were full of wariness. Everyone says it. Kayla has Jason's eyes and my nose. Yes, everyone says so, Melissa said sarcastically. But what's the truth? What are you trying to say? Carol's voice had a hint of irritation. Haven't you noticed? Melissa looked at her mother. How much Brittany has lived on lies. And you've always allowed it. Melissa. Carol raised her voice in scolding. You shouldn't be talking about such things in front of the children. Then when? Melissa's voice was quiet but had steel-like strength. When you ignored and hurt Taylor at his birthday party. Or when you give Kayla special treatment at every weekly dinner. Calm down, Brittany said, unable to hide her anxiety. If I've done something to offend you, I apologize. But to discuss this in front of the children, special classes that only talented children can enter. Melissa interrupted Brittany. Taylor practices piano for an hour every day, but his lessons are in a normal class. Why? Because we don't have connections? Or because we can't lie like you? Brittany's face turned pale. What are you trying to say? Melissa took the white envelope from her bag and placed it in the center of the table. Jason has been suspicious for a long time. He came to me for advice, so I helped him investigate. What is this? Carol asked in a confused and angry voice. DNA test results, Mom, Melissa said quietly. Kayla is not Jason's child. As those words fell, silence spread across the table. The smile disappeared from Carol's face in an instant, and she gasped. All color drained from Brittany's face, and she grabbed the table with trembling hands. That's a lie, Brittany said, her voice shaking. It can't be. Melissa calmly opened the envelope and took out the papers inside. Science doesn't lie, Brittany. The probability is near zero. Who is Kayla's real father? Mom! Brittany cried out to her mother for help. Melissa is lying. Believe me. Carol was speechless with shock. She looked at Jason. His expression was hard, filled with sadness. Kayla? Taylor? Stephen suddenly stood up. Why don't you two play outside? There's a swing in the garden. The children, aware of the tense atmosphere at the table, got up immediately. Stephen took them outside. Once the children had left, Brittany suddenly broke down crying. Jason, don't believe it. I love you. Kayla is your child. Jason quietly stood up and took the envelope. Brittany, we've been together for over 3 years. We got married when Kayla was 3. I've loved her as my own daughter, so... He exhaled deeply. If this is true, be honest with me. Who is it? Brittany continued crying. Carol put her arm around her daughter's shoulders and glared at Melissa with angry eyes. Why would you do this? Are you trying to destroy the family? Melissa returned her mother's gaze steadily. I'm not the one who destroyed the family. It was Brittany who hid the truth. And you who always excused her behavior. In the silence, only Brittany's sobbing could be heard. Then, she finally raised her face and said in a trembling voice. When Kayla was 1.5, it happened once. When Jason was on a business trip for 2 weeks. Her confession echoed through the dining room, and something collapsed inside Melissa. There was no sense of victory, only the pain of the family and the difficult road ahead that they would face, as she continued to sit quietly. When? With whom? Jason's voice was low but dignified. His hands were trembling, but his expression remained calm. Brittany wiped away her tears and lowered her gaze to the floor. 3 years ago, when you were on a business trip to Seattle. With David from the marketing department. Carol stood up from her chair and slammed the table. Melissa. How could you do this? Betraying the family like this? Her voice trembled with anger and sorrow. Melissa looked quietly at her mother. I'm not the one who betrayed the family, Mom. Even if Brittany made some mistake, is it your role to expose it? Carol's voice was full of accusation. She's your sister. Yes, she's my sister, Melissa folded her arms. And I've always overlooked her mistakes, protected her, and accepted your special treatment of her. But it's time to end that. Jason slowly stood up. His expression showed deep sadness, but determination was also visible. I'm taking Kayla home. I won't tell her anything yet. This is an adult issue. As he was about to leave the room, Brittany grabbed his arm. Jason, please. Let's talk about this. Not now, he answered quietly. I need time to think. Carol put her arm around her daughter's shoulders and glared at Jason. You are Kayla's father. Even without a blood connection, you've raised her for 3 years, haven't you? And now? Carol. Jason's voice was gentle, but his eyes were cold as steel. I am Kayla's legal father, and I love her. But the fact is that Brittany lied to me. Trust has been broken. What happens next is for me to decide. He left the room. The sound of Kayla and Taylor's laughter could be heard from the garden. They were playing innocently, unaware of what was happening among the adults. Carol returned to the table and covered her face with both hands. What a terrible thing. Melissa gazed at her mother. The anger in her heart had subsided, and now only fatigue and sadness remained. Mom, why do you always protect Brittany? Why do you never hold her accountable for her actions? Carol raised her face and looked at Melissa with red, swollen eyes. She's vulnerable. She always needed special attention. You were always strong, independent. So it's okay to ignore Taylor too. Melissa's voice was quiet, but the weight of her words resonated across the entire table. At his birthday, all the presents were for Kayla. Do you understand how much that hurt him? Carol didn't answer. Brittany sat slumped, still crying. I'm going home now. Melissa stood up. With Stephen and Taylor. As she headed for the door, Brittany suddenly stood up. Melissa, wait. Her voice was trembling but desperate. Why did you do this? Revenge? Because I've always been favored. Melissa turned around and stared at her sister. It's not revenge, Brittany. It's justice. Jason has the right to know the truth. And she stumbled over her words for a moment. Kayla and Taylor have the right to be loved equally. They shouldn't grow up in a home where only one is given special treatment. Melissa. Carol stood up and tried to approach her daughter. Not now, Mom. Melissa raised her hand to stop her mother. We all need time to think. When she went out to the garden, Stephen gave her an understanding look. Taylor and Kayla were playing on the swings. Melissa's chest ached. The two children were innocent, unaware of the complexities of the adult world. She worried about how tonight's events would affect their relationship. Taylor, it's time to go home, Melissa called to her son. But Mom, Kayla and I still want to play, Taylor said, displeased. Another time, Melissa answered gently. It's time for Kayla to go home with her dad too. Kayla tilted her head. Is Dad angry? He had a strange look on his face. Melissa was surprised by the child's keen observation. He's just a little tired. It's okay. She took Taylor's hand and signaled to her husband. The three of them headed to the car and quietly made their way home. Meanwhile, inside the house, an intense discussion continued between Carol and Brittany. What are you going to do? Carol asked, unable to hide her anxiety. What if Jason asks for a divorce? What about custody of Kayla? Brittany looked up. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but there was something like a new resolve in them. I was wrong. I shouldn't have lied. Of course, Carol said. But now we need to think practically. Your lifestyle, Kayla's future. Mom, Brittany took her mother's hands. I've realized something. I was raised to think I didn't need to take responsibility for my actions. I always thought someone would protect me. Carol looked at her daughter with a surprised expression. What are you saying? Melissa is right, Brittany said quietly. I need Jason's help to raise Kayla. But first, I have to acknowledge my mistakes. And she took a deep breath. I need to tell the real father too. Carol collapsed into a chair. You too? Taking Melissa's side? I'm not taking sides, Brittany said. It's just, she was right. Our family has been built on lies and biased love for a long time. It's time to fix that. The next morning, Melissa woke up early. Last night's events kept replaying in her head. The phone rang, and Jason's name appeared on the screen. Melissa, can we talk? His voice sounded tired but calm. Of course, she answered. How's Kayla? Still sleeping, Jason said. I talked to Brittany last night. She admitted everything. David is the real father. I see, Melissa said quietly. What are you going to do? I contacted a lawyer. Jason's voice was filled with determination. Divorce is inevitable, but I won't give up custody of Kayla. She's been my daughter for 3 years. She still is. You're a wonderful father, Melissa said sincerely. I want to thank you, Jason said, for revealing the truth. It's painful, but it was necessary. After the call ended, Melissa told Stephen everything. He put his arm around his wife's shoulders and said, You did the right thing. As she was preparing breakfast, a call came from Carol. Melissa answered the phone nervously. Carol's voice lacked its usual strength and sounded weak. I wanted to apologize to you. Melissa was surprised and lost for words. She couldn't remember her mother ever apologizing. What happened? She finally asked. I've been thinking all night, Carol said. Brittany and I, we talked. She's trying to change, and her voice choked. I was wrong. About Taylor, about you? Tears welled up in Melissa's eyes. I want to talk to Taylor, Carol continued. I want to apologize to him. And start our relationship over. Melissa took a deep breath. A few hours ago, she might have doubted her mother's sudden change. But there was genuine regret and willingness to change in her voice. You can come any time, Melissa answered. Taylor will be happy. After hanging up, Melissa looked out the kitchen window. The morning sun announced the beginning of a new day. A new beginning after family truths had been revealed. It wouldn't be an easy journey. Healing wounds and rebuilding trust would take time. But this morning, for the first time, Melissa felt hope. 6 months later, Melissa stood by the window, watching Taylor playing in the garden. Beside him, Carol sat, enthusiastically explaining something. They appeared to be sorting through a huge collection of colorful tree leaves. Carol and Taylor's relationship has really improved. Stephen placed his hand on his wife's shoulder. Melissa smiled. Yes, Mom is really making an effort. Every weekend, she plans something special for Taylor. Last week, she took him to the Science Museum. After that family confrontation, things gradually changed. In the first few weeks, everyone needed time to heal. Jason proceeded with divorce proceedings from Brittany but chose to remain Kayla's legal father. He also contacted David, Kayla's biological father, and the three of them discussed Shio parenting. Surprisingly, David also wanted to be part of Kayla's life. He hadn't been informed of the child's existence. Though the relationship was tense at first, the three adults gradually found ways to cooperate for Kayla's sake. The bell rang, and when Melissa opened the front door, Jason and Kayla were standing there. Hello, Aunt Melissa. Kayla greeted cheerfully and ran inside. Taylor is in the garden with Grandma, Melissa said, and Kayla ran off toward the backyard. Jason smiled at Melissa. She's been so much happier lately. We explained the situation to her in an age-appropriate way, but she has remarkable understanding. Children are resilient, Melissa replied. How's Brittany? She's changed too, Jason said, somewhat surprised. She found a new job and is trying to be independent. Last week she paid Kayla's school fees herself for the first time. Melissa nodded. An apology letter from Brittany had arrived last month. At first, she didn't believe it, but seeing that Brittany's behavior was truly changing, she too had begun to slowly repair her relationship with her sister. The sound of children's laughter came from the backyard. When Melissa and Jason looked out the window, they saw Carol treating Taylor and Kayla equally, showing both children a red leaf. In the end, revealing the truth was the right thing to do, Melissa said quietly. It wasn't an easy journey, Jason agreed. But it was necessary. That weekend, Carol gathered all the family for a special dinner. On the table were 2 small cakes, one with Taylor's name and the other with Kayla's. This is a belated birthday celebration, Carol smiled at Taylor. Grandma is very sorry for what she did to you. Things will be different now. Taylor smiled shyly and hugged Carol. Melissa watched the scene, remembering the words Taylor had whispered in her ear. Mom, sometimes telling the truth is hard, but it's the right thing to do, isn't it? She had stroked her son's head and answered, yes. Sometimes revealing the truth can be painful, but it's the right thing to do.